Hello, welcome to the Sideboard here at the Star City Games Modern Open in Knoxville, part of the SCG Tour, brought to you by Ultimate Guard and KNOX Chairs. I'm Nick Miller alongside newly minted Team BCW member Corey Baumeister. How we doing?
I'm doing really good, man. How about yourself?
Great.
Good.
And we get to see you a lot more on the tour now.
Yeah.
You're a big part of it. Last week, top 4 with the team.
Yep.
Playing Temur Urza, you're doing that again.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that deck, because we wanted to talk to you last week about it, but you're here with an updated build of Urza, the best deck in the format, but now splashing red.
Yeah, so I was on, most like everybody else on the Sultai version, but I was really struggling with liking Abrupt Decay and Thoughtseize. Especially Thoughtseize on the play, I just always kind of wanted to be doing my thing. I didn't want to be trying to disrupt because so many cards in the format are just redundant. And then Abrupt Decay just wasn't good enough against everything. Like not being able to kill Oko was a big deal to me, or not being able to kill Urza was a big deal to me. So I wanted something that was a little bit more well-rounded here, and that's what brought me to Galvanic Blast. Galvanic Blast struggles a little bit more against Oko than Abrupt Decay, but most of the time when you're playing this deck, you're able to at least hit it for 3 with one of your own food, and then Galvanic Blast most of the time finish it off. And then you get to kill Urza. I killed like Liliana the Veil with it. I domed my opponent for 8 for the win and stuff. So I really liked that. And then for the mirror, I also wanted something that went over the top. And Experimental Frenzy, like I played like 2 games with it, and it was just insane.
This is the huge part for being red in this deck.
Yeah.
When you look at the mirror matches, and when you look at the matches where you have to go even longer, the things we saw the BCW team do last week, because y'all were playing this, you just would play half your deck off the top, and it was like, oh, well, they are not doing anything like that. Now, some people are even adding actual future sight to their decks to kind of get this effect.
Yeah, and that is spicy. I think anybody who's playing kind of the Sultai list to keep that going, I think future sight is great. But I do think Frenzy is better, because the main thing I was also looking for is, number 1, an enchantment, because Oko can't turn into an elf. That's a huge thing right now. But also I wanted something that pivoted quite well against disputes, which almost every blue deck is bringing in some number against us, because we have so many great targets. I mean, hitting some of our best cards in the form of Oko and Urza is just and Emery is just a great reason to have
all of your
that card.
threats, effectively.
Exactly. So I wanted something that dodged that. It was so many times my opponent would just leave open 1 mana, play like an Oko or whatever, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I just on turn 4 I have 3 other cards or whatever, but I'm just like Frenzy, and it ended such a high percentage of the games that I decided to run with it from there.
Right.
Yep.
The rest of the deck here, pretty stock of what Urza's doing. You're doing all the busted free cards, Mishra's Bauble, Mox Opal, Engineered Explosives, along with the Astrolabe. So you got all the artifacts going on. You have the Metallic Rebukes, but then we have to talk about the changes you made this week.
Yeah.
You weren't doing the Cryptic Command, Mystic Sanctuary stuff quite as hard last week. This week you are. How did we come to this conclusion?
So, first, Nick Miller, our Temur deck, I had the original shell on like Wednesday before the event. I showed it to the team. I had a Renin 6 in there, and I think solely because I had that card in there, everyone's like, no, this is heinous. And so I put it down, and then we were just getting destroyed. Like, we were not doing well in testing with the Sultai version. So then last minute, it was like 11 p.m. or something the night before. I'm like, well, let's try this again. Let's pivot back to this. So me and Eli Cassis, a phenomenal player, teammate of mine.
Brewer extraordinaire as well.
Oh, yeah. And it's almost always Eli when it comes to Urza builds, because he's just so good at deck building. But I was like, you know what, let's go back to this build that I had a while back. We tuned it a little bit, and we loved everything. Even, the Angers and the Blood Moons in the board were great, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But the main hole we noticed is the other Urza decks could Cryptic Command Mystic Sanctuary lock us when we have Frenzy out, and there's like basically nothing we could do. So we noticed a big hole there. Not a lot of people did it because, they didn't know our list. They didn't know that it was just open. But now that people are going to know our lists, or at least know the list from last weekend, we had to do something to do that. And, the Mystic Sanctuary Cryptic combo was already really good. And now Mystic Sanctuary can help with Galvanic Blast as well to get those last couple points.
I talked to one of your teammates, Daryl Ayers, and he mentioned, everyone's doing the Cryptic Sanctuary stuff, but no one's ready to just get aided out of nowhere.
100%.
And that's something that you can steal wins with and in games quickly, which is really important in this format where it's so grindy.
And when you can kill a Goose, you can kill an Emery, you can usually finish off an Oko, you can kill an Urza. You know, I mean, Galvanic Blast is arguably better than Frenzy, even though they both serve their very specific roles. But there's also a nice little thing that we can do with 3 Galv Blast in the main and 2 Sanctuaries. That's 20.
That math checks out.
Check it out. Carry the 5.
Don't have to attack at all. That's where the control players want to be.
Exactly.
Everything else here is what Urza does.
Yep.
We've seen these cards before, but now we'll move to the sideboard and talk about, you have the extra Experimental Frenzy where you want to go heavy on that.
Exactly.
Then
and we
talk
had
about
a third before,
right.
but we figured that was a little bit too much.
Go in depth on the red cards here. Anger is your sweeper of choice, and then Blood Moon. This looks to be against the big mana decks.
Big mana decks, yeah. You know, I mean, I just personally, like many of you out there, hate losing to Tron. So I make sure to bring as many cards as humanly possible. I think it's Tron and Burn that it's just every time I lose, I'm just like, dang it. You know, I should have packed a little bit more
sideboard
hate.
cards.
Exactly. But yeah, Blood Moon is just excellent against big mana decks. Anger of the Gods was getting people all weekend last week. You know, I just had an Elves player that was like, this is my best matchup because he didn't see a Mountain game 1 and he just sprays the board. This is even on camera, I think like round 3 or something. I'm just like, yep, resolves. Anger like 7 or 8 permanents away and he's just like, oh. So yeah, I mean, the red cards were just a nice push for me, and I think, yeah, they're quite good.
Counter spells here, we have the Ceremonious Rejection, your own mystical disputes for when you're fighting these blue decks.
Yep.
Veil of Summer, this card's not going anywhere as long as it's legal. The decks that can cast are going to be playing it.
You know, I didn't like it that much last weekend. Like, it was pretty bad for me, but I figured with an individual open, I was going to be playing against a lot more wide variety of stuff, and maybe like Jund Death Shadow where it's actually good, but like, in the Urza mirrors, I was always bringing in 2, and they just were not great for me, you know? So I considered going down to 1 to either play another Nature's Claim for mono red or just, you know, any kind of artifact or enchantment or another rejection to, you know, beat Tron.
Right.
But I decided to stay with Veil since it's going to be a very open metagame this weekend, and, you know, hopefully it pays out.
Last 2 cards here, we have the Ashiok Dream Renderer. This is the other package, I assume, that comes in with Blood Moon against the big mana.
Yeah.
Or specifically the Titan decks.
Exactly. Like, they have a ton of cards they bring in for Blood Moon with Rex Sage, Force of Vigor, other stuff like that. So this isn't always a guaranteed plan, but this, Ashiok, and then backed up with some counter magic, usually is good enough, but I mean, it wasn't on camera, thankfully, but Matthew Dilks, the one who stalks, absolutely destroyed me in just masterclass by, you know, I mean, I had Blood Moon, I had Ashiok, just played around it very well, you know, got me, you know, was very patient, destroyed Blood Moon, and then just beat me in the Field of the Dead. So, I don't know, I don't feel great about that matchup. Hopefully, I'm just hoping people don't play quite as good as him.
Right. Not many people do in the modern format.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about modern right now? A lot of people are calling for bans.
Yeah.
Do you think the format is as narrow as it was last week in the team event where it was effectively Urza decks and Titan decks?
Yeah, I think it's very narrow. Whenever Modern is basically at 3 to 4 to 5 decks that are even viable, I think something needs to happen. And you know, I think the Urza deck is fine without Oko. Oko just really shuts down so many decks. I would call for that. You know, some people would say Mox Opal as well, but I just bought that playset, so I don't think we should ban that yet. But yeah, I think Oko is a little too good. It shuts down just too many decks that people love to play, right? You know, so let's ban Oko. I'll get Thopter Foundry Sword coming back in, and I'm going to still have a great time in Modern. So.
All right, awesome. Well, Corey, this deck was very good last week. We're going to see how it's positioned this week. Thanks for joining me as usual.
Thanks, man.
Stay tuned to Star City Games all week long for the action here in Knoxville.